How close were you to picking the Jets?
How close was I? Who? The Jets?
I don't think the game's over.
Welcome into Triple Zeros, the anti-hot take sports show. I'm your host, Josh Buckhalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports. Website, clockersports.com. Email address is clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, follow the show on Facebook and Twitter at 30spod. That's the number 3, zeros, and pod. That voice you just heard was one Tyreek Hill of the now of the Miami Dolphins. He was recently traded in a flurry of action in the NFL, really since the season has ended. And had some, not choice words, but a very interesting take on his potential landing spots versus where he actually ended up. Before we get into all that, you already know what it is, man. We made the switch completely, and it's time to get into some NBA action. So, first up on the NBA docket, you have the Bulls and the Hawks report, because I think I want to try and go a little bit more local beforehand, stuff that I'm intimately familiar with before I move out and expand the scope. That being said, be sure to like, subscribe, follow, rate, review, all those good things. Tell your friends about me. Let everybody know where they can find the show, which is everywhere, and follow. Yeah, here we go. So, First and foremost, the Chicago Bulls are sitting now in 5th in the East. They just took on the Cleveland Cavaliers, winning that season series 3-1. Giving them the tiebreaker should they fall into some kind of a tie, obviously. They also own one over the 7th-seeded Toronto Raptors. Now, here's where things get interesting. As it currently stands, the Bulls are slated to match up against the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round of the playoffs. That is not a good matchup for the Bulls. If that's how it ends up in the rest of the season, then I can see the Bulls getting bounced in the first round. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed. I think the Bulls are capable of beating Milwaukee. I don't think that they have the necessarily fortitude right now that Milwaukee has been able to show, obviously as reigning champs, but also throughout this campaign here. So I'm not thrilled about that matchup. I would still love to see it. And again, I think the Bulls will give them a better run than people are giving them credit for, but it's not a good matchup. They should be eyeing or hoping to play Boston or Toronto. I'm just not sure that we're going to see that kind of a flip from Milwaukee. Now, I mean, Milwaukee's going to fight till the very end. Maybe Boston loses some ground on them, and then those positions flip in the near term here. But as it stands, the Bulls have one bad matchup and two possibles. If Toronto somehow gets into that matchup, or if the Bulls fall down to where they're the ones who are now playing around, whatever the case may be, that's the matchup that that they're facing Boston, and Toronto faces Milwaukee. The Bulls probably aren't jumping up to third to get to that Toronto matchup. So the point is that this is going to be tricky, and I don't want people to be, I guess, down by that potential outcome that the Bulls could be bouncing in the first round. As me personally, has been preaching that they're going to be a second round team, just through all of the ups and downs, mostly downs, through all the injuries, through all the really the tailspin that they have been in since the All-Star break, which coincided with a couple of key injuries that I've been pounding the desk on, and to that point, they've gotten Alex Caruso back, Patrick Williams is back in the rotation, and both of those guys have provided some much needed defensive punch and energy, especially in Caruso's case. Williams is kind of an even keel guy. And another even keel guy that they're missing that I think has kind of gotten undersold in how they've been able to manage without him is Lonzo Ball. And I think I've been saying it kind of every week now on the show, but when you lose your starting point guard, things are going to fall apart, especially when that starting point guard was brought in because you couldn't orchestrate an offense last season. Now, this is not meant as disrespect to Caruso, to what Kobe White has tried to be at that position, to what Ricky Dosunmu has brought at that position. But none of them are the passer that Lonzo is. None of them have the offensive IQ that Lonzo has. Whereas Caruso's bringing you all this energy and effort, Lonzo's a far superior passer and a better shot maker and creator. And I think that part has gone unnoticed because we've gotten those couple of guys back. Lonzo's been out for so long. He had the setback now. And people are kind of down, maybe not on him, but just on what he's brought and what he's meant to this team. And it's funny because before this year, a lot of talk around him has often revolved around his demeanor, his countenance, as the word. I had to find that word. I had to use it. Not on the word of the day calendar, just wanted to use it for my personal gain. And I'm of the belief that his flat look is beneficial to these Bulls, especially these Bulls, because they don't have that rah-rah fight guy, right? Caruso's an amp you up guy, but he's not a fight guy. He's just a, hey, let's lock in, let's be intense kind of guy. They don't have that. I guess Tristan Thompson tries to be that, but he's a new guy, so that doesn't take as well. And Tristan Thompson has a bit of a reputation of his own that kind of hinders his ability to be that as effectively as he possibly could on other teams or in other coming from other players. Lonzo's steadiness is what this team needs when they get too hyped up on their ability to blow these teams out and they just start settling for anything because they feel like they got it in the bag. Vice versa, or conversely, when they're down and they're struggling, they're forcing offense. He's a guy who will settle everybody down and get the ball to the right man in the right spot. That's so important, especially with a guy like Nikola Vucevic, who we've seen kind of float between effectiveness and ineffectiveness as he's trying to find the sweet spot between being in the paint and being on the perimeter so that he can leave those lanes open for DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine. And it's just been kind of all off kilter ever since Lonzo's been out. I'm not saying he's a cure-all. I'm not saying that would guarantee them a victory over Milwaukee. What I am saying is that we've just seen a lot better from this team since the All-Star break with him in the fold, and their outlook, I think, would be a lot more positive regardless of the matchup in the postseason if they were fully healthy. So, as for the Hawks, they got a big win over the Stephen Curry-less Golden State Warriors the other night. They're off until Monday, so that's fine. And honestly, I'm waiting with bated breath on this team until I find out exactly what's going to happen with John Collins. I think he's so important to what they want to do. Obviously, I've written a lot for Soaring Down South. Go ahead and check that out about what he brings to that their quote-unquote death lineup with Trae Young, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Kevin Huerter, Collins at the 4, and then Clint Capella. That lineup is their most efficient, or it was at least until these past few weeks, but they haven't had him. They haven't had Collins for but 4 games since February 13th. We're over a month and a half now, and there's no guarantee that when he comes back, if he comes back even, that he will be effective. That finger is pretty busted. They said the only thing that'll heal it is rest, and so they're in kind of a holding pattern here where everything they're doing is almost because this season's been kind of disappointing. So, but with him being down, everything they do from I guess here on out, but really in the play-in and going, anything beyond that would kind of be gravy, just because this is a team like the Bulls that is so dependent on things being right that when something throws that off, we see the tailspin they had in the middle of the year. Now, they dealt with a crap ton of injuries, so I'm not trying to belittle that at all. But you can see that when things are clicking for them, they look really, really tough. They're really, really good. But when something throws that off kilter, it becomes a bit of a slog for them, and that's where I think their downfall will ultimately be if they can't get Collins back and if they don't figure out some other way to, I think, consistently put pressure on the rim and on defenses in terms of fouling. They don't get to the foul line nearly enough. They let teams off the hook a lot of times when they get them in the early foul trouble, and so I'd like to see that change for them going forward. Maybe that's going to have to take a roster change. I'm not sure. We'll talk about that more as the season goes on and we get closer to that point, because right now the focus is solely on the play-in, postseason, and all that kind of stuff ahead of time. Now, speaking of the Southeast Division, where the Hawks play, Udonis Haslem and Jimmy Butler got into it on the sideline as the Miami Heat were losing to a Steph Curry-less Golden State Warriors team, and who was it? Steph was out, Draymond was out, Klay was out, so it was nobody there. Also, before I go on about these Hawks, I do still believe that if they get into the playoffs, that if they get Collins healthy, not a lot of teams will want to face them, including these Miami Heat. Teams that don't necessarily, that went off defense, aren't going to want to play this Hawks team because of Trae Young's ability to blow up your defensive plan with his long ball. And then the fact that his floater and his lobs look identical. You can't tell what's happening, so it puts the defender in the paint in a hard position. So I do still believe that the Hawks can be a very, very tough matchup for anybody in the postseason. It's just a matter of getting to the play-in tournament and then winning your matchup and then winning the next matchup to get into the actual playoff bracket. So there. Now, moving on, like I said, back to UD and Jimmy. Jimmy Butler has been struggling, to say the least. He's now shooting single digits from 3% from three-point range. He's been a guy who has been abrasive in the past. I don't know if that's coming to head here in Miami. Miami's a kind of hard-nosed team despite their glitz and glamour appeal. They are a very hard-nosed organization. They work. They are in shape and all that kind of stuff, so that you don't expect them to be necessarily falling apart. But I do find it interesting that this blow-up is happening while Jimmy's struggling but they're still sitting like near the top of the standings in the East. Miami right now is the 2 seed. They are a game behind Philadelphia, half a game ahead of Boston by virtue of their victory. Now, I will say the Bulls might want to face Miami. If Miami free falls into a matchup with Chicago, that's a pretty even series. I know Miami would be favored, but I wouldn't put it past the Bulls to be able to sneak past Miami. So just put that out there. But they are the 2 seed right now. They have, like I said, Jimmy Butler has been shooting horribly from 3 as the season has worn on. They have lost 4 in a row now and 5 of their last 7 games. So things aren't what they once were for Miami. They got 3 more games coming up. One of those will be in Chicago against the Bulls. So we'll see how that goes. That could be hopefully some kind of a matchup. I just don't want the Bulls to play the Bucks. I don't want them to play the Bucks. I don't want them to get bounced in the first round. Not because I think it would change my opinion, but I know what the narrative is going to be, and that's just unbearable sometimes to deal with narratives that aren't necessarily false, but are too heavily rooted in one side of the argument. And I think that would be what the case is with the Bulls, because we've already seen how people have discussed them without acknowledging how significant the injuries that they've taken have been. They lost their best defenders and their top 2 point guards. Let's remember what this team looked like last season without those pieces, right? So that's where I'm at with the Bulls. Miami, though, let's talk about this. Let's see this Jimmy video, because, again, like I said, it's interesting the timing, because Jimmy is struggling and they are struggling as a team, but also because they're still the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference. So it is kind of surprising to see this kind of a blow up happen at this point in the season. But here it is. So there you have it. It's a little bit hard to hear if you're not watching the video. Shame on you, first and foremost. But second of all, you missed the ability to kind of read the situation visually and put the words together. Because like I said, it's a little hard to hear with the other background noise and the music playing. But at one point, Spoelstra's talking to Jimmy Butler. He says to Jimmy Butler, "What, you want me to fight you?" And then you hear Udonis Haslem kind of stepping up for his head coach and saying, "Hey, we are not your MF and boys, basically. We're not." Anybody that grew up in a household like mine can tell you what "we're not your little friends" means, okay? I'm not your little friends. That's what Udonis Haslem was telling Jimmy. I'm not your little friends. That's a whooping threatening before the whooping actually comes or the actual threat comes. That's your preempt. That's your first sign, okay? That's the weather. That's the winds picking up before the storm arrives. That chill in the air, that was UD right there, saying we're not your MF and N words, okay? We're not your boys. I'm not your little friends. But then he went on to tell him, step outside. He told Jimmy, let's get outside, and finished it with, "I'll beat your ass." All I could think of in this moment was a 50 Cent song, "I Whoop Your Head, Boy." And I really wish that copyright laws weren't as such that I could play that song. I need that as sound, and I might do it for social media, because that was what I could think of. "I'll whoop your head, boy." Udonis Haslem told Jimmy Butler, "I will beat your ass." And I'm not sure that anybody out there denies that. I don't know of one person that felt. Even Jimmy got up and walked away from the situation. Now, you could say, hey, he was being the mature person. He was being the adult in the room. UD is a coach now. He should know better. Hey, listen, that may be the case. But when UD told Jimmy that he would beat his ass, that was about the end of the argument. Okay, you can say Jimmy kept talking, but Jimmy kept walking in the other direction. He didn't want that smoke from UD. UD went to childhood on him and told him, "I'm not your little friends. I'll give you the whoop down that you're looking for." And then the video continued with Spoelstra following Jimmy and talking even further, and them two still saying anime. Now I'll say this. For as wild and as hilarious as that blow-up was, I love it for them. This is, like I said, a hard-nosed team. They need this. They were getting their asses kicked, and they've been getting their asses kicked. He's not played well. This is what this kind of thing. Now we'll see how they respond, right? They could come out and respond positively. They ended up taking 2 more L's since then, to the New York Knicks of all teams, and then to the Brooklyn Nets, where they scored just 95 points. So it hasn't taken just yet. At that point, they were in the midst of they just lost 1 game to the Sixers, and it was a road contest, but still they had lost 3 of their last 5 after that game with the Warriors, and then 2 more since then. So it hasn't really taken. But I do love it for them because, like I said, they're a team that can't get complacent. They don't have the overwhelming talent at the top. They're like a Bulls or a Hawks team where they kind of need things to be working for them to pull it out. Grinded out mentality is great, but I think in the earlier rounds of the playoffs, it's not as effective because guys are still fresh enough to beat your defense, and the league is geared towards beating your defense. So that kind of clouds it for them. But I just love that Miami blow up happened. Like I said, with Jimmy struggling and the fact that they're not looking like the team that we thought they were, and they're out here blowing up despite being the second seed in the NBA in the East. That's great. That's what you want from your team. Like I said. So now switching gears over to not switching gears, but shifting our focus over to the Western Conference. Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies are really just doing the damn thing right now. Memphis is the 2 seed in the West. Ja Morant has missed a handful of games, but it has not stopped a damn thing. They've won 4 straight without him. Matter of fact, they've won 5 straight without him. Lost the last game that he played in. That was to Atlanta, and that game we saw him actually leave a little earlier because he ended up suffering the knee injury that's kept him out since. But I'm just impressed with what Memphis has done. Now, Memphis is a team that I told y'all before the season could be a dark horse, and even I'm taken aback by what they've done. And I think it's mostly because in the 19 games that they haven't had Ja, they are 17-2. 17-2 without your best player. Now, I've heard some stupid conversation. I'm calling it stupid because people are saying, well, they're better without Ja. Clearly, you don't understand the makeup and the functionality of a team and how it's supposed to work on championship rosters. Championship rosters should be able to get you through a good chunk of the regular season without your superstar. That's what championship rosters do. The depth, the quality of the players that are on those rosters are such that they can get you through a good chunk of your regular season schedule looking all right. Your superstars come into play in the tighter games against the top opponents. In the postseason where things slow down and the difference makers are the only ones that can beat set defenses that have been schemed on for game after game after game. Let's not forget what we know to justify some kind of a narrative that we want to push. I hate that. I really don't like that. And for Ja, for his team to go 17-2 without him is a testament to what they've built. Not a testament to how good they are without him. That's asinine. A complete ridiculous thing to break out my Stephen A. term. That's asinine. Asset 10, asset 11, asset 12. It's ridiculous. I don't understand it. I don't quite know exactly why anybody would even feel that way. Now, I will say that Memphis' defense is better without Ja on the floor, but that doesn't make them a better team. And there's a significant difference that when you ignore it, I tune you out from that point on. And I think that's one thing we've seen a little bit too much lately is that people are just trying to diminish what Ja's brought because his star has risen so fast. They had the feel to me of a Hawks team, but I think they might be a little bit better constructed than the Hawks because they actually have two-way players and guys who have a little bit of an edge. The Hawks don't have that edge that Memphis has shown all season long. So they got that win over the Brooklyn Nets. They've done the thing without Ja Morant, but that does not mean that they are better without Ja Morant. Let's be clear, okay? Okay. Minnesota Timberwolves, their makeup with Patrick Beverley in the fold has been something that's been impressive to me. And I've been following this team semi-closely just because of the Karl-Anthony Towns situation. Potential Hawks target, or at least he was at one point. I'm not so sure you would say that anymore with how he's been playing, how they've been playing. Minnesota rather, is the 7th seed in the Western Conference, 43-32. Patrick Beverley's made a huge difference in how they've just approached the game. Their demeanor. Cat, as a guy who I've often chided for being, I don't want to say too in-depth, but emo, right? He's borderline emo. And I don't mean that negative. It's just how he is. He's just that kind of a guy. He's also a dude who's incredibly tough, strong-willed because of all the stuff that he's endured just in the past couple of years with all the family members that he lost due to COVID. So please don't take that as a negative connotation. It's just he's not a tough guy. I wouldn't think of him as a tough guy. Well, this season, we've had Cat talking a little bit more. He's been clapping back at the critics, right? He's openly engaging in mockery on the court of guys like Russell Westbrook. I do that all the time, right? Mocked Russ when he airballed. So the demeanor that Patrick Beverley has brought on to this team, I think, poses an interesting question. I just told you about Jimmy Butler. and how he's struggling and how he just had to blow up and it hasn't really taken. Patrick Beverley has had his fair share of criticism from one Russell Westbrook talking about how he had y'all tricked. He tricked y'all. He just run around. He don't play no defense. Pat clapped back at that. I wonder, and I'm half serious, but I'm growing more serious the more I say it out loud. Is Patrick Beverley a better leader than Jimmy Butler? And I say this only because we've seen them now with the same player and get different responses. We heard about Cat kind of shrinking up and not taking the Jimmy style of leadership. We've seen Jimmy style of leadership rub people the wrong way in 3 previous stops. Right? The Bulls didn't end well. That team got blown up, and my brother swears by this to this day. They could have kept him and Rose together if Jimmy was a team player, but Jimmy thought that it was time for him to be his team. Rose's injuries kind of lent credence to the idea, and the team moved on. My brother Sinful had theories that Jimmy Butler broke up what it could have been a championship caliber roster if they just stuck with it a couple more seasons at least to try to work through some of those injuries with Rose and get Jimmy to be the player that he had become before recently just in doing this, becoming more of a personality than necessarily the basketball player that we had come to enjoy watching on the floor. It's an interesting viewpoint because I just don't know if it's all the way true. Again, Cat went through a lot between then and now, but we've seen Jimmy flame out a couple since then as well. Joel Embiid says he loves him. Ben Simmons said he hated him, so that kind of jibes. I don't know how it would have worked out with Embiid because I see how he folds when he feels like his teammates are folding, so that's not necessarily a great fit either. But you have to wonder, Pat Beverley's gotten better results out of his teammates, and we know that he's been in there. We know that he's been he's had that kind of an impact on them. We didn't see that from Jimmy Butler. So I just wonder, Jimmy Butler's probably the better player. I'm not even going to, he's the better player. But there's a case to be made that Patrick Beverley is the better leader. And I don't know if that's not necessarily more valuable in certain instances than what Jimmy's bringing, especially at this point if he's not even a threat from beyond. He's a center at this point, a point center. A weird blend of skill sets, but still a skill set blend. Brother Sunflower. A sunflower grows in Brooklyn. Brother Kyrie Irving, has been cleared to be a full-time player for the Brooklyn Nets. Now, he didn't just get cleared. New York lifted their mandates. So it ain't like they did something specifically for him. They did it for the city. And before we even talk about what that means for Brooklyn in the playoffs, let's talk about what this means for New York. I have felt for a long time that both sides were trying to use this for publicity, but I really felt that the new mayor, as a person who does not live in New York, felt like that new mayor was using this to kind of build his reputation in his early days. It seems like the sentiment had kind of flipped because it felt like he was picking on Kyrie and holding off the big decision to spite Kyrie Irving. And so now it's flipped, and Kyrie won. He stood his ground. He didn't make any concessions. He got to play. He played by whatever rules they laid upon him after he made his decision. And now he's back on the court full time, and it's scary for the rest of the East. Because we know he's got some pent-up aggression. I love it. I love it. I love that if you stand for something or you fall for everything. He stood for it. A lot of people I know that talk about it didn't stand for nothing. Caved quick. Still crying. Kyrie didn't cry. Kyrie didn't try to point he took his comeuppance. All right. If I got to sit to have my principles, so be it. And he did, and now he's back. Look out. That's all I'm saying. Look out. The Lakers are guaranteed to have a losing record. I don't know what else to say about that other than, yeah. Listen, man, they put a team together that I thought had a chance, but they never figured out how to make it work, and then injuries kicked in. Let's not act like we didn't see this team do some things, but they were never really the threat that I think most people thought that they were going to be, just because it was such a clunky fit roster-wise. Russell Westbrook is a guy that needs the ball in his hands. So is LeBron James. And neither one of them offer as much off the ball, Russ especially. And then you add in the factor of Anthony Davis and his inability to stay healthy. Now, I've seen a few people try to say that the Bulls should go all in, take the risk, calculated risk on Anthony Davis. And I understand that thought process. A talent of that nature, yes. However, the package that it comes in is certainly not worth a squeeze. Mr. Glass, as it were, would break upon landing at O'Hare. I'm not sure that that's the move the Bulls should make. I do think the Bulls should make a move, but it's not AD. For the Lakers, they're going to have to try to figure out how they can retool this thing. If they can find someone else to take Russ's contract on to get some better pieces in here. They didn't get Buddy Hield. Can you imagine the Lakers with a Buddy Hield and Malik Monk backcourt? Yuck. So, again, health still, I think, ultimately determined their fate because AD going down kind of sunk their ship. But they could have constructed this roster a lot better. Like I said earlier, roster construction has a lot to do with how far you can go in this league because your roster outside of your superstars should be able to carry you for a good chunk of the season. The Lakers couldn't do that. They couldn't do that. We know that. They couldn't do that. So, I'm not surprised. It is a bit disappointing for the Lakers team because, I mean, you know, they've been good. Was this the first time in, 3 years since LeBron first got there? Yeah, so I'm not, you know, it is what it is. We'll see how they finish. If they can finish strong, you know, but they're going to have a losing record this year. For the first time, like I said, in 3 years since LeBron first arrived. That first year they went 37-45. Then they went and got AD and got a championship. So maybe this spurs them to get another big trade piece and they get a championship out of that too. But doesn't look good right now. We're not even talking about what this does for LeBron individually. This is just for the Lakers as a team. This is not as surprising, even if you were high on them in the beginning, because you could tell that they had as well a very thin margin of error because of how they built the roster. So, yeah, that's just kind of the situation that the Lakers find themselves in. A lot of teams built something that didn't quite turn out the way they thought it would, and so now they're kind of just left holding the bag and wondering what they're going to do going forward. So, now, switching gears. Are the Chicago Bears losing the offseason? This is a question that I kind of got into for Last Word in Pro Football. Be sure to check that out. Again, you can find it on my Twitter feed at Josh G. Buck. That's at Josh G. Buck. So the Bears have seen, what was it, 7 first-round draft picks, the most traded in the modern era, multiple quarterbacks, multiple high-profile wide receivers. We'll get to one in a second. They've seen big-name defenders, including their own, get traded out of the division. And they've kind of stood idly by while the Jaguars overpaid for receivers, while the Miami Dolphins kind of may be getting a bit ahead of themselves with their roster construction. I do like it, though. The Bears have been bargain hunting. Ryan Bates, Lucas Patrick on the offensive line. Bates is still kind of in the air because he has not, we don't know if Buffalo's going to match that offer sheet just yet. Byron Pringle and Equinemius St. Brown at the wide receiver position. They've added Trevor Siemian at the backup quarterback. None of those moves are groundbreaking, but let me tell you what they did. They added some linemen with some nastiness that they like, one of which knows their offensive system. And is upgraded at the center position. I know that people are saying that it's not as big of an upgrade over Sam Musafir, but as a person who was high on Sam Musafir to start the season and had to watch it devolve as the year went on, Lucas Patrick is a welcome change, if nothing else, just because of his demeanor. And I feel like his versatility in being able to move side to side. Musafir did not move very well, and he wasn't strong. So, Bates, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know much about Bates. I got to see Lucas Patrick fill in for the Packers multiple times in multiple positions over the past year. So, and then Byron Pringle and St. Brown, 4th and 5th options on their previous teams. I will say that I wrote this in the article in Last Word Pro Football about the Bears not caring about winning the offseason, that Pringle had more yards last year than a guy like Marquez Valdez-Scantling. So that people were kind of high on. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, that was one that I thought the Bears should probably try to pursue. But the bigger thing I think that people kind of miss out on is it takes two sides to agree to a deal. The Bears can offer people money. They don't need to be overpaying. And if the guys don't want to take a reasonable salary and they want to get paid elsewhere or go elsewhere, there's nothing the Bears can do about that. And that's why the article I wrote probably captioned wrong, because it sounded like I was, down on it. But at the end, I told you they don't care. And that's all that matters. My opinion on it doesn't matter. It matters what they were doing. And the Bears simply do not care about winning the offseason. And I can't blame them. Do you think Jacksonville's going to be that much better? Are we that convinced that Jacksonville will be? No, they could be. We'll see. Doug Peterson has won a Super Bowl. Trent Baalke has built a roster that got there. Both of them have had downfalls that included their personalities and rubbing people the wrong way, though. So I'm not completely sold on Jacksonville. I know they overpaid. We'll see how it pays off for them, their return on their investment, as time goes on. Staying in the panhandle of Florida, you have the Miami Dolphins making a trade. They signed Terron Armstead. They drafted Jalen Waddle last year, but then they added the cheetah, Tyreek Hill, in a surprise move that got them one of the top receivers in the game. you can talk about his speed, but he's an underrated route runner as well, and he just knows how to get open. In his introductory press conference, Tyreek Hill tried to, address the rumor that he was close to a deal with the Jets. Before the deal the Dolphins went down, it was reported that the Jets were right there on the verge and that they had made a very strong offer. And I'm pretty sure they felt like they had been in the driver's seat of this entire thing, because I don't know, it came out that their offer was ultimately better than what the Chiefs got from the Dolphins, but they couldn't get a deal worked out because Tyreek was not going to go to the Jets. And if you don't believe me, let's just hear from the man himself and what he had to say.
How close were you to picking the Jets?
How close was I? Who? The Jets? Nah, man. Look, man, it's a lot. I don't even want to get into all that. I knew I was gonna pick Miami no matter what, man.
So, like you said, he knew he was gonna pick Miami no matter what. But the Jets? Come on, fam. And now that brings me back to the point I like to often make, that a lot of teams are just destined to be, or they're stuck in this position of being a farm system, a glorified farm system for other organizations, and that's because of the work that they've done, the track record that they've shown. The Jets have proven to be unstable, incapable of building upon their own success, and even detrimental in many ways to their own success over the long run from the top down. That's not to put a negative connotation on Robert Saleh or anybody that's currently coaching or running or on the field. This is a top-down issue. You got their owner worried more about being an ambassador at times than what's going on with the football team. This is how you get these kind of results. And so I think that, that response from Tyreek Hill, while it was tongue-in-cheek and he didn't necessarily mean anything bad, anything mean-spirited about it, or by it rather, you can't deny that it's very telling. He said, who? The Jets. Like he didn't know. Come on, fam. So that's just, hey, it is what it is, man. Sorry, Jets fans. They were closest. Like I said, before the deal went down with Miami, it was reported that the Jets were the closest one. It was all but done. And then the rug came out from under them. Jets. Mess. Tyreek will be good with Tua. Tua, as he said in the video, his intro a little bit later on, is one of the more accurate guys in the short range. He can't throw deep. But with Waddle or Tyreek Hill, you probably don't have to. And then you got Raheem Mostert in the backfield. That's a lot of speed. That is a lot of speed to give the ball to and let them do the work. So Tua, this is probably his last year if he can't make something work, but he don't got no excuse, and all he's got to do is get the ball to him 3-4 yards down the field, and they'll do the rest. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. Is Tom Brady trying to ruin Tua's day, though? Reports are, just rumors, Tom Brady is trying to force a trade to Miami. There's apparently some friction between him and Bruce Arians. Okay, you won a championship, things fell apart. I think Tom wants Bruce. Tom is a buttoned-up guy. Bruce is a guy that kind of likes to control and do things his way. So that's two alphas clinging and clashing. And there's rumors that Brady could force his way to, or is looking to force his way to, the Miami Dolphins. Look out. Listen, I as much as I like what he has there in Tampa with Godwin and Mike Evans, if you are going to tell me that he's going to be able to have the cheetah, that kind of speed with the defense that Miami's having, and then he's going to be in the beautiful luxury of Miami. So, listen, as a person who has changed work environments simply for the comfort level, I can tell you the benefits are ridiculous. You feel better, you look better because you feel better, and if you look better and feel better, guess what? You're gonna play better. And I just can only imagine what Tom would have in the freedom and the light environment of a South Beach. Tampa Tom taking it down to South Beach. And then on top of it, he get to screw over the Patriots twice a year. I'm pushing for it. Not the biggest Tua fan, not a Tua hater. I just want to see it. That's all. Brady in Miami, though, could ruin all that before Tua even gets a chance. Who knows? The Cleveland Browns intro Deshaun Watson this week, and while it went about as you would expect, I will say that there has been some interesting coverage of it without getting into whether I think he's guilty or innocent, because his cases are still playing out in the civil trial. He had his criminal charges dismissed. That does not mean that he did not do the things. It means that there was not enough evidence to bring criminal charges in the court's eyes. Now, the thing that I said, the civil case is a whole other thing, and he says he has no intention of settling. He wants to clear his name. Good for him. Good for the ladies who saw their criminal cases be dismissed, still sticking with their fight and taking it to them civilly if they feel like if that's the course they plan to take. What I will say is there are plenty who have felt that the dismissal of the criminal charges is simply not enough, and there's no possible way that he didn't do it. There are some who have said that the Browns, because of the representative of the ladies, Tony Busby, saying that the Browns had not spoken to any of them, are not caring and they're sick, and this is the worst thing that they can do. I'm not going to completely disagree, because I will say that moving around his contract, while they say it's standard the Browns did, it's clear what you're trying to do. You're trying to manipulate his money to help it make it easier for him when he gets the suspension that should be coming or could be coming. But I will say that it's interesting to me to find out people who are so staunchly on the opposition of Watson before the process is played out, in a time where people are very quick to tell you, let the process play out first. How much we've forgotten, I guess, how the timing of all this coming up, the rapid acceleration of these lawsuits. Again, I'm not here to tell you whether or not he's guilty, and that's going to be decided in the courtroom, and then I'll leave it at that. That's not my place. I'm not on the jury. Do I think he did it? Possibly. I'm also going to say that the criminal charges are, as we've seen in this country, a tough thing to prove, and I know that the NFL is not tough on this. So I think it's more of a place of, even if he did do it, once the criminal charges are gone, my hands are, not my hands, but my mindset is the NFL is not going to take this nearly as serious as they would have. So that's where I'm approaching this from. Regardless of what I think, even if it's criminal, it's weird. The stories are weird. I don't know if he did it or not. That's going to forever go down as an unknown. But it's odd. An odd choice, the amount of massage therapists that he went to. But that does not make him a guilty man, and I refuse to go down that path. That's where I don't like it, and I whatever reasons you have, that's your prerogative. But it is interesting that it's already been decided in a lot of people's minds, despite the fact that we've heard very little from his side, as much as we've heard from the other side in the court of public opinion. But like I said, when this all started, Busby getting out in front of this thing and being out there in public eye was very good for his side in that regard, because a lot of people don't look beyond that. So, the Browns, maybe they did overlook a lot of stuff, but as far as talking to the plaintiffs, they said that they were advised not to by their legal counsel, which is something that I can see, because it could be viewed as bullying, which is almost certainly what they would have said had they approached him. So I just am, this is par for the course in the NFL. This is a legal process that is still playing out. And but pay attention to how people are discussing this, because I think it's very telling and probably will show up in other ways if you just keep your eye on it. So, our team's smart for passing on Baker Mayfield, soon to be former Browns quarterback. Yes. Do not trade for Baker Mayfield. That does not mean that you cannot sign Baker Mayfield once he's released. Listen, the Browns are in a no-win situation here. You're either going to have to take pennies on the dollar, or you're going to cut him for nothing, because you can't keep him around, and you can't expect to get a high return for a guy that you clearly aren't going to have any use for with Deshaun Watson in the fold. Now maybe Cleveland holds on to Baker and Watson gets suspended, and they let Baker run those first few games. He comes back right before the trade deadline, Watson does, and they trade Baker Mayfield for a piece. If that happens, then, so be it. But right now, I'm not going to grab capital for a guy that I know that you don't want, that I know doesn't want to be there, and I know there's a good chance that you end up releasing him because you don't want to have that kind of a situation in your locker room. So teams are very smart. Very smart. Now, I will say some teams, the Texans, should be looking to get him. This next thing we're going to talk about here, they should be looking to get him. But they're very smart to not trade for him. Not trade for Baker Mayfield. Just not going to do it. Kyler Murray is plus 500 to be the Carolina Panthers' next quarterback. Murray and the Cardinals have had back and forth with social media scrubs. He's been scrubbing and reapplying pictures and then scrubbed them again. And no one knows what his affiliations are going to be in the future, because nobody knows what Kyler Murray's doing and blah, blah, blah. And we have all this talk about him being immature. And he is being immature. I defended him the first time around because, Arizona has not been the most upstanding organization in themselves with how they handle players. But at some point, you got to just stop being coy, stop being, because he's talking about his response about scrubbing was, kids my age, bro, you are a grown-ass man. The moment you refer to yourself as a kid, despite being a multi-millionaire NFL player, you're done. I've lost it for you. You're now proving to me that they were right. You are being immature. You're not a kid. You haven't been a kid for a few years. So you weren't a kid when you entered the NFL. You weren't a kid when you left college. That to me was a big red flag for Kyler Murray. And as a person who's still high on his ability and still down on the Cardinals organization as a whole, because I just felt like they're kind of averse to long-term success. I still have to say that was not a good look for Kyler Murray. And if I'm the Carolina Panthers, I'm now having to wonder if Kyler Murray is necessarily a better presence in the locker room than a Baker Mayfield. His glitz and glamour is there, but he's a smaller guy, so he's limited in different ways than Baker Mayfield is. Interesting choices with the offseason still far from being over. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, email address clockersports@gmail.com, and of course, you can read the stuff at Last Word on Pro Football, Pimpin' Ain't Easy, StoryDownSouth.com, and clockersports.com. Until the very next time, man, you already know what it is. That's the sound of the horns. I'm gone.
Who? The Jets?